Have you ever noticed how the worst people often seem like they're winning? On the surface, they laugh louder, shine brighter, and collect praise as if life itself is cheering them on. But here's a truth most people overlook. Life doesn't settle its debts in front of an audience. No spotlights, no announcements. It collects in silence behind closed doors, in the quiet hours when no one's watching. A true Stoic doesn't waste their time chasing revenge. They don't fire back. Don't throw words like daggers, and they certainly don't linger in the shadows hoping for payback. No, they observe. Because while you're healing in peace, while you're rebuilding what someone else tried to break, karma is already moving in silence. And it never misses, not once. You might catch yourself thinking, maybe they got away with it. The lies, the betrayal, the manipulation, the way they walked away as if nothing happened, leaving you with a storm they pretended didn't exist. But something did happen, and the universe noticed. Life is now speaking to them in the only language karma knows. Quiet, unrelenting, whispers. No one else hears them, but they do, every single day. In this video, we'll uncover 5 silent signs that someone is already feeling the consequences of how they treated you. Not in front of a courtroom, not beneath the spotlight of public opinion, but within their own restless minds, in the privacy of their lives, and in those still moments they desperately avoid. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. And truth, as Stoics understand, has a voice louder than any scream. It's called silence. There's nothing heavier than pretending you're okay when your heart's in pieces. But karma? Karma isn't fooled by appearances. It works through what people feel when they finally drop the mask, when no one's around to applaud or console them. And here's where it begins. The very first sign karma is quietly at work is when the person who hurt you suddenly starts acting like they've never been better. The one who ghosted you, betrayed your trust, tore you down, and then had the audacity to make it seem like you were the problem. Now somehow they're glowing. New photos flood their social media, laughing in places you two never shared, posing with people who never knew your name. And if you're not careful, you might buy into the illusion. You might scroll through their carefully curated highlight reel and whisper to yourself, wow. Maybe they really are happier without me. But here's the truth no filter can hide. Real happiness is quiet. It doesn't need to be proven to anyone. Fake happiness, though, it desperately seeks validation. You've seen this pattern before. First, they go silent for a few days after the fallout, keeping a low profile. Then, boom. A flood of pictures, inspirational quotes, staged selfies, and a sudden glow-up campaign. One minute they were dismantling something authentic, and the next, they're hashtagging healing with someone new, like guilt never grazed their soul. But if you look closer, you'll see the cracks. The smiles stretch a little too wide, the eyes distant, the energy frantic. Because genuine peace doesn't perform, it just is. And the louder someone works to prove they've moved on, the clearer it becomes that they haven't. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That's why a Stoic never argues, never chases, and certainly doesn't stalk someone's story for closure. We watch, we rise, we heal in silence. Because true peace isn't a performance for others. It's a quiet, unshaken presence. And karma? It doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It shows up quietly every night when they lie in bed and realize, deep in their core, that the person they've become is the very reason they lost someone who never wanted to see them suffer. And that, my friend, is a weight no amount of staged happiness can carry. And as we said before, no number of perfectly staged photos, no flood of empty captions, and no shiny new partner can silence the one thing they can't outrun, their own conscience. That quiet voice knows the truth. It knows they ruined something real. And no matter how wide they smile for the camera, you see right through it. Because the most exhausting lie anyone can live is pretending to be at peace when they're anything. But here's a truth most people forget. Karma doesn't always strike like a lightning bolt, sudden and dramatic. More often it begins as a quiet erosion, like water slowly wearing down stone piece by piece. It starts taking things away. Not the grand, obvious things people expect, but the small, subtle parts of life they thought would always be there. And this brings us to the second undeniable sign that someone is silently receiving their karma. Life starts reclaiming the very things they once held so carelessly in their hands. People tend to imagine karma showing up with a bang, a public betrayal, a nasty heartbreak, a life-altering accident. But karma, much like nature, is precise. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't throw tantrums or crash through walls. It simply begins subtracting. At first, it's so quiet they don't even notice. A close friend stops replying to their messages. A trusted colleague begins to pull away. An opportunity they were banking on slips right through their fingers, vanishing without warning or reason. And what do? They shrug it off. They call it bad luck, coincidence, timing. They convince themselves it's just life being unpredictable. But then it happens again, and again, and again. A pattern begins to form, so subtle at first it feels invisible. Until one day, they look around and realize they're standing in the ruins of everything they once mocked, belittled, or ignored. The people they called too sensitive or too emotional, the ones they claimed cared too much, the ones they laughed at for reacting with heart, and maybe that was you. The person who stayed up late to text them through their darkest nights. The one who forgave them even when they acted like your worth was disposable. The one who believed in them long after they stopped believing in themselves. And how did they repay that kindness? They rolled their eyes. They joked you were clingy, needy, too soft for a world as cruel as this. They treated your presence like a guarantee, not a gift. So eventually you stopped offering. You stopped fighting for someone who never once showed up for you. And in that quiet, steady way only the strongest people know, you walked away. At first, they felt untouched, free, unbothered, like they dodged a bullet. But here's where life steps in, slowly, silently, and begins to rearrange the pieces. The once busy phone grows quiet, messages slow down, the circle around them grows smaller. And those few people they do trust, they turn out to be exactly like them. Selfish, dismissive, transactional. Suddenly all the options they thought they had, gone. The support they once received without asking, missing. The warmth of being understood, deeply and without pretense, by someone who actually cared, irreplaceable. Because no one, no matter how charming or convincing, can fill the space you once held for them, and especially not someone new, someone who only knows the version of them still pretending to be healed. Because deep down, we all recognize when we've lost something genuine, and what replaces it never feels the same. And so, as the circle shrinks and the silence echoes louder, Life continues stripping away the comforts they once took for granted. Because karma, like truth, never leaves unfinished business. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one." And karma, in its quiet wisdom, works much the same way. It doesn't waste time arguing with them, punishing them with loud, obvious disasters. Instead, it strips away everything in their world that no longer aligns with truth. You see, when someone mistreats a good person, they don't just betray you. They betray a better version of themselves. The version that once held peace, patience, forgiveness, and depth in their grasp. And karma's punishment isn't the dramatic collapse they imagine. It's far more personal, far more intimate. It punishes them by revealing in no uncertain terms exactly what they chose to lose, and then makes them live without it. Suddenly, every room they walk into feels colder than it should. Every new relationship, no matter how exciting it looks on the outside, feels thinner, emptier, missing the depth they once took for granted. Every achievement, every so-called win, feels strangely hollow. Why? Because deep down, in the quiet, moments when no one else is around, they know they had something real, and they let it slip through their fingers like water they were too arrogant to cup. Let them lose. Let them learn. Let them wake up one day, look around, and realize that none of what surrounds them now feels as safe, as sacred, or as rare as what they once had with you. Because karma doesn't just take away things. It takes away the person they were when they still had your love. And here's the brutal truth. No matter how hard they try, no matter how many new people they meet, they'll never again find that version of peace. It left with you. Now, how do you know karma's already working? It's when their words start circling in empty loops, and yet somehow you remain at the center of every sentence. The third silent sign karma is at work is when you still live in their thoughts. Even when they pretend you don't exist anymore, even when they avoid your name like it's forbidden, you're still there. Listen carefully. They'll start posting vague, cryptic quotes on social media, mysterious captions about betrayal, loyalty, fake friends, or healing from a murky past. Little. You've been there before, scrolling through your feed, minding your business, when suddenly a post appears, one that feels like a bullet wrapped in pretty words. They don't tag you, they won't mention your name, but every syllable screams your presence without ever saying it. It's like they're desperately trying to grab your attention while pretending they don't need it. But here's the thing. That's not power. That's not healing. That's not peace. It's a conscience cracking under the weight of a collapsed ego. Maybe their friends won't notice. Maybe no one else around them will pick up on those subtle cries for acknowledgement. But you will. Because once upon a time, you loved them deeply enough to read their silences. And now those very silences are chasing them down. Because karma doesn't always punish through external events. Sometimes it punishes with obsession, with thoughts they can't escape, with regrets too heavy to carry, with memories they swore would fade, but now haunt them like shadows they can't outrun. And here's where the Stoic difference shines. A Stoic does not seek revenge. A Stoic doesn't clap back, doesn't drop passive-aggressive quotes, doesn't throw subtle jabs. No. A Stoic stays silent, steady, and unmoved. Because in the end, the mind is the loudest prison of all. And some people are already serving a sentence you'll never have to deliver. And as we said before, when karma takes root in the mind, it doesn't let go. The thoughts, the regrets, The unspoken words. They grow louder in silence. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Because when you choose to reply, you give them validation. But when you stay silent, you reclaim your power. Epictetus once taught, if someone speaks ill of you, live in such a way that no one will believe it. And that's exactly what a Stoic does. When they talk around you, about you, behind your back, you don't respond. You don't justify. You don't correct their version of the story. You let them carry your name around like a weight they can't drop, because the more they speak in circles, the more it exposes the truth. You left, but they never did. Let them keep talking. Let them drop their cryptic quotes, half-truths, and twisted versions of the past. Let them heal loudly, because deep down, both you and they know they're not healing at all. And the best part? You don't need to be in their life to live in their mind. That's karma's most relentless work. And remember this, the mind is the loudest prison a person can live in, especially when the one they wronged won't even turn around to look back. Stay silent. Because silence, once again, says everything. Now here comes the fourth undeniable sign that karma is at work. When someone betrays a good person, they don't just lose them. They lose the ability to truly trust anyone else who reminds them of that person. And over time, they slowly stop trusting themselves. At first glance, it looks like self-protection. They shrink their circle, distance themselves, claim they're just being more selective. You'll hear them say things like, I don't trust people anymore, or everyone's fake these days. But beneath that tough, guarded exterior isn't strength, it isn't wisdom, and it isn't healing, it's fear. The kind of fear that festers quietly in the long, cold shadow of guilt. You've seen this happen before. They used to laugh freely. They trusted easily. They spoke carelessly without overthinking. But after what they did, whether it was to you or to someone else, something inside them shifted. Not on the outside where everyone can see. No, it happened deep within, slowly, quietly, like a crack forming in a frozen lake. Now they second-guess every word. They scan every conversation, every silence, every action, suspiciously looking for signs that someone might betray them the way they once betrayed you. They assume the worst before they even give others a chance. Why? Because deep down, they remember exactly what they were capable of. And when you've been the one to inflict harm on someone who didn't deserve it, you start to believe everyone else carries the same potential for destruction. That's karma's most intimate form of punishment, not through chaos, but through self-suspicion. It isolates them, not by force, but by quietly eroding their sense of trust and safety from the inside out. The voice that once shouted, "I'm in control," now whispers, "Maybe I'm the problem." And that thought, that tiny, insistent doubt is more terrifying than any consequence you could deliver. Because once a person starts doubting themselves, peace becomes impossible, no matter how still, how quiet, how empty the room around them is. Seneca captured this perfectly when he wrote, "He who does wrong rarely trusts anyone else because he knows what he is capable of." The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that your inner peace isn't something you can fake. It's directly connected to your conscience, and when your actions betray your own values, you won't just lose other people, you'll lose yourself. That's how karma works. It doesn't always arrive invisible. headline-worthy ways. Sometimes it appears as an invisible fracture in the soul, a silent crack in the inner world they thought was unbreakable. And as that quiet erosion of trust takes hold, as their world shrinks and their thoughts turn against them, something heavier starts to settle in, a restlessness they can't explain, a strange, persistent tightness in their chest whenever life feels a little too good, like a voice in the back of their mind whispering, "You don't deserve this." Even when something real, something meaningful finally appears in front of them, they can't fully embrace it. Let them sit in that silence. Let them question every person's motive, every kind word, every moment of kindness. Let them fear the very same shadows they once cast on other people without a second thought. Because karma doesn't simply haunt people with memories of what they've done. It steals their peace and replaces it with paranoia. And the worst prison isn't made of walls or bars. It's built inside the mind, where your conscience becomes both the guard and the executioner. So if they can no longer trust anyone, if they're chasing ghosts in every room and doubting every hand extended to them, don't feel bad. Don't feel tempted to fix them. And most of all, don't come back just to prove not everyone is like them. That's not your responsibility. It never was. Your role was never to be the redeemer of someone who willingly chose destruction. You offered them truth, and in return, they gave you betrayal. Now karma is giving them exactly what they earned, not chaos, not public drama, but the quiet, relentless collapse of their own inner stability, the gradual rusting of self-trust. Karma doesn't yell. It doesn't announce its arrival with dramatic gestures. Instead, it calmly introduces people to the one thing they've spent their entire lives avoiding: themselves. And here it is, the fifth and final, most undeniable sign that someone is silently receiving their karma. When life sends them someone just like them, not merely a bad match, not just the wrong person at the wrong time. No, life delivers a mirror, a walking, breathing reflection of everything they once did to someone who loved them. And this reflection, it doesn't come with flashing warnings, no red flags in sight. It arrives sweet, charismatic, magnetic, just like they were back when they first won your trust. At first, it feels like fate, like destiny. They'll convince themselves that this time they've truly met their match. The chemistry will be intense. The connection will feel instant, deep, electric. But what they don't realize is that they aren't falling for something new. They're falling into a karmic loop, one designed not to show them who they love, but to reveal who they've been. And this time, they aren't holding the power. Remember how they once made you feel unsure? How no matter how much of yourself you gave, it never seemed to be enough. Now, the roles reverse. Now they find themselves chasing unanswered texts, waiting by the phone for calls that never come, posting things just to be seen, only to be met with silence. They once played the game of hot and cold with you. Now they're dating someone who burns them with silence, then drowns them in affection, only to pull away again and mock them for being too emotional. The vulnerability they once turned into a joke? Now, when they open up, they're met with the same dismissal. The loyalty they once took for granted, gone. Now, they beg for commitment from someone who keeps one foot in and the other out the door. At first, they'll rationalize it. This person's complicated. They've just got issues. They're misunderstood. But quietly, in the moments, no one else can see, a horrifying thought begins to rise. This is what I did to someone. They won't say it out loud. They may never admit it. but it will haunt them. In the pause before they fall asleep, in the hollow silence after yet another failed attempt to connect. Because the pain they're feeling now isn't random. It's not bad luck. It's pattern recognition. It's karmic justice delivered in its most poetic, undeniable form. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. But the universe doesn't seek revenge. It seeks balance. And it restores that balance not by hurting someone back, but by giving them a lived experience of the pain they once inflicted. Through someone they can't control, can't fix, and can't predict. This isn't about punishment. It's about perspective. Because no lesson is remembered more deeply, no wisdom sticks more firmly than the lesson you're forced to feel in your own skin. And as life delivers them a mirror in human form, one reflection after another, the real consequences begin to surface. Not with noise, but with a quiet ache they can't outrun. They used to laugh at how deeply you cared. They mocked the tenderness you showed, treated your needs like burdens and your feelings like weaknesses. Now, they're crying over someone who couldn't care less if they stayed or walked away. They used to belittle your emotions, labeling you as too much for simply wanting to be loved right. Now, someone else tells them the same, coldly, withholding affection, keeping them guessing, dangling connection just out of reach. They used to walk away from you like they were untouchable, as if your absence would never matter. But now they find themselves begging, pleading for someone to stay, to respond, to try. And the cruelest part? That person shrugs, barely looks back. That's the moment it hits them. Not like a sudden crash, but gradually, a slow, painful unraveling of denial. They're not just being hurt, they're being reflected. And the mirror never lies. Let them meet their match. Let them feel the very confusion, the very helplessness, the very ache of being seen, used, and discarded, just like they once did to you. But this time, there's no one left for them to blame, no one to gaslight, no one to twist the narrative for, because the person on the other side of this pain isn't a monster. It's them, in a different body, same behavior, same cruelty, different name, and that's not revenge, that's return, because karma doesn't scream. It doesn't break down doors or destroy what it can simply reflect. It turns the mirror toward them and waits. So when they finally ask themselves, why is this happening to me? The answer is brutally simple. You're not being punished. You're being shown. You don't need to fight people already fighting themselves. You don't need to explain your side of the story. You don't need to prove your worth to those who were too blind to see it the first time. Karma doesn't need your help. It needs only one thing from you, your silence, your composure, your refusal to sink to their level. Because while they're still tangled in lies, pride, and manipulation, you've already stepped into something greater. Clarity. That's the Stoic way. Karma isn't just about what happens to them. It's also about what happens to you. And when you finally let go, when you truly release the need for closure, peace quietly takes its place. You stop waiting for justice, because time itself becomes your witness. You stop hoping they'll feel what they did to you, because life already knows how to teach lessons deeper than you ever could. Your purpose isn't to punish. It's to rise, to become so grounded, so clear, so inwardly steady that no one, not even the ghost of the one who hurt you, can shake your peace again. That is the Stoic way. We don't curse our enemies. We don't chase validation. We simply move forward, quietly, powerfully, carrying the kind of discipline and self-respect that karma honors. So if you're watching this right now and someone has hurt you, someone who never apologized, someone who walked away pretending you didn't matter, let them. Let them have their illusion of freedom. Because while they may look fine on the outside, they are quietly haunted by one thing they'll never outrun: the truth. And trust me, people who lie to others can still sleep at night. But people who lie to themselves, they don't sleep at all. If this message spoke to you today, take a moment and drop the one line from this video that hit you hardest down in the comments. Let others walking this same path know they're not alone. And if you're serious about building a mind that leads, not reacts, about cultivating clarity, discipline, and unshakable peace, subscribe to Stoic Scrolls. Here, we don't just talk about healing. We live it. We don't chase drama. We train the mind. We build wisdom. And we grow in silence. Because while karma handles them, you'll be becoming someone they'll never have access to again. And that's not revenge. That's evolution. And the world, it watches in silence. Because growth like that makes noise without a sound.